I've got some movies you wouldn't believe of, of people making it and people not making it. In slow motion with a Strauss waltz. Easy if you have the money, how much discomfort you can buy. It is an overwhelming experience. And to be in a small boat and to be going down through those rapids, which are the best in the world. Close to impossible to run in many cases, but not impossible. We're looking at a river that was perfectly designed. You start off with the rapids not quite so threatening. And as you go downriver, they get bigger and bigger. And finally you hit the climax, Lava Falls, which is indescribable. Lava is the big word worldwide to represent whitewater. Scary, but exhilarating. No photograph can carry the way the river behaves down there. And suddenly you've whooped it, so to speak. Ecstasy almost. The trips also had long periods of calm, lots of time to explore the side canyons, which are paradise in many cases. They're wonderful gardens. And there are lots of waterfalls, springs, and really magic places. Grand Canyon dams were in the planning stages in 1949. When the Sierra Club took up the issue, the Sierra Club had a kind of a multiple view of the whole thing. There were people in it who thought, this is inevitable, it's going to happen, so why should we try to stop it? There were a few in the Sierra Club and elsewhere who said, we'll do everything in our power to stop it, and we're not going to give up.
We're paying the bills for the very agencies that would destroy the beauty of these places. This is our dilemma. How are we served by public agencies which we must support, and how can we in any way have an influence or a voice in what they do?
Unfortunately, the dam builders have proposed for the Grand Canyon 2 dams whose only purpose would be to generate electricity. One dam, 310 feet high, would be in Marble Gorge and drown the upper 40 miles of the canyon. The daily rise and fall of the water releases from this dam would close the canyon and river bottom for 104 more miles, down to the head of the second proposed reservoir. The dam for this one would be 670 feet high, flooding out the 94 miles that would be left of the canyon's river.
Well, of course, there was a foregone conclusion in many quarters that what the federal government wanted to do and what the state of Arizona wanted and other things would prevail. It was considered vital to the future of the West.
For centuries, the Navajo has lived among the tall buttes and red sands. Into his land came Lake Powell, which he has woven into his pattern of ancient ways. And the land speaks to him of beauty and harmony.
So there were people who thought, well, it's inevitable. We can have recreation on those reservoirs. We'll call them lakes.
Skiers try their skill on hundreds of our country's lakes. But
The whole river was being developed, as you know.
the sheer spectacle of its scenic backdrop.
Hoover Dam was built between 1935 and 38. It was the first big one. And then Glen Canyon Dam above, but on the Colorado River. We knew what would be gained and what would be lost with this project. We knew the canyon, we knew the issues, and we just were not going to be willing to let it happen. All of the communications media, all kinds of officials from state and federal levels, they would convene here at Grand Canyon, and we would try to show them the truth. We would take an airplane and fly them across the canyon, land on the other side, and show them what the effects would be of the reservoir that would be downstream behind the Bridge Canyon Dam, which was the name given to one of the two proposed dams. We could look straight down to the river there and see how beautiful it was all along through that area and point out how deep the reservoir would be and look at what was going to be lost. And we said, no, it's not going to happen. We don't have to compromise. And so the government punished us. In fact, tried to prevent us from doing what we were doing by killing our tax exemption as a charitable organization. But you know, that was a very good thing because it got into the news.
Congressman Aspinall is starting the hearings.
Others joined in, but it became a Sierra Club project under the inspiration and action and knowledge and dedication of one person more than anyone else in the world, David Brower.
And if the administration goes in without a position against this dam, we're in the same trouble we were. It really hasn't been alleviated.
Well, doesn't today's action by Udall give you hopes that he will take some position on the other dams?
I very much hope he will, but this has to be clarified. It is not clarified, as you will see, in the prepared statement the Secretary read this morning in Washington.
While the public may not have cared all that much about the Grand Canyon, the public knew what it thought of the IRS. Sierra Club got a lot of new members out of that. We got stronger and stronger because of the government's effort to make us weaker. I worked for the Los Angeles Times, and I put lots of pictures, lots of headlines in there about the results to come if these dams were built. And we showed the beauty that people hadn't had any idea about, because this area is not explored by the general public. politicians who went began to understand that we knew what we were talking about. We weren't just some fuzzy-headed liberals, you know, who were making a lot of noise. It was a hard fight. We had strong people on our side in Congress. It's hard to find any these days, but we had some then. And we had to show that this thing wasn't needed.
And if the administration goes in without a position...
Dave Brower sat down, burned the midnight oil, and proved that all of these things were really impractical in the end.
We are, of course, grateful that the administration is no longer supporting a dam in the marble gorge of the Grand Canyon.
We finally won. We had saved the Grand Canyon. I'm certainly glad I've enjoyed the Grand Canyon. It's been a wonderful part of my life. I won't be around it much anymore, but for those who will be, I'm glad that they have the canyon intact to enjoy. There's nothing of which I'm more proud than the small part I played in saving the canyon from the desecration that it was faced with. All the naturally growing sequoias are growing in the Sierra Nevada in California. And 1/2 of all of them are in the giant Sequoia National Monument, which didn't even exist until the year 2000. 2.5 years after the monument was declared, the logging was to end. It's been 5 years, and the logging is just getting into high gear. They're ignoring the proclamation. They're going right ahead, logging it like crazy. And we'd better get this place into the national park system. That's our first step. It's said reliably that not 4% of all the native forest in America remains, and that's almost entirely in the West Coast states. And there's so little of it left. You just have to fly over it and look down and look at the clear cuts. to have history look upon us not as destroyers but as saviors of something, we'd better act now. Here we have our own land, not privately owned, owned by us. We're the people who own this. We should take care of it. We should make the rules. There's so little left of all of our forests that we should cherish every single native spot. We can only save it from ourselves by leaving it alone, and we can enjoy it that way. Now, John Muir called them the noblest forests of the world. This national monument was supposed to be protected, saved, kept, never touched, except that a few years of logging were allowed to continue in order that the timber sales already made could be honored, as they say. Well, this is a typical giant sequoia. It happens to be in the so-called Long Meadow Grove in the Giant Sequoia National Monument. The Giant Sequoia National Monument, created by presidential proclamation, holds approximately 50% of all the giant sequoia trees left on Earth. And yet it's cared for by the United States Forest Service. The man in charge of the Forest Service now in Washington, at cabinet level, is Mark Ray, a former lobbyist for the timber industry. That's what he did until George Bush made him the head of the agency running the Forest Service. It's like putting the fox in charge of the chicken house. This tree has stood here for at least 3 centuries. A healthy, sturdy sugar pine. The real reason for taking this down was to get it to the sawmill. That's the only reason. They will use the term, it was a hazard tree. Oh, this tree is hazardous, it might fall on somebody. That's true of every tree in the world, even the ones that are planted along our city streets. Every tree is going to fall someday, and the chances of it falling on someone are so remote, it's not even worth considering. And then they say, oh, we've got to take them away before they burn up. Over all the eons of the past, the forests always burned up, but they didn't all burn up, and they didn't burn up completely, and they don't now. Fire produces benefits in the forest, keeps the forest going. These trees have been known to be 325 feet tall. The roots are very shallow in these trees. They never go more than 4 feet into the ground. It doesn't take much to push a big one over. Logging around these trees involves machinery that tears up the soil and actually cuts off the roots of the giant sequoias. And as long as the Forest Service is in charge, it will find excuses for destroying our forests. And here we are on June 16th, 2006, and this is what we find. People are losing their property, our property, your property, every day to the scurrilous activities that the Forest Service has authorized, the logging of your giant Sequoia National Monument.
It's about a 100-year-old tree.
It's done by the United States Forest Service under the guise of forest protection. In October 2006, We once again took the fight to Washington, D.C.
There are the three sisters that we just saw.
We shared photographs to illustrate the delicate and diverse nature of a sequoia ecosystem.
Giant sequoias are scattered. They aren't a continuous forest forever. They're groves, as they're called. And within a grove, you have sugar pine, white fir, red fir. Have a few sequoias here and there. It doesn't really make a forest.
We also expressed our concern over the stonewalling by the chief of the Forest Service on behalf of the Bush administration.
The annual Interior Appropriations hearing, and Bosworth, the chief of the Forest Service, was testifying, and we supplied Maurice Hinchy with the photos, and he grilled the chief, and the chief gave false answers about the logging going on here. So we already have them on record, just trying to cover up what's really happening.
While the court case is going on, the logging is going on. And then when we get a judgment, which we always do, it's always, all the judges have resolved in our favor. But by then, they've done most of the damage, and we're only getting judgment for that area that we sued on. So they just move over to the next one. And that's what they're doing. Right while we're here today, they're logging in the giant Sequoia National Monument at a furious rate. It's the only hope, and we have to pass this bill to get it.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
We just have to get these forests saved, and the only way for this one is to put the giant Sequoia National Monument out of the hands of the Forest Service and into the National Park Service, where these wonderful forests belong.
He's created a path for all of us to walk down.
He's not jumping on anybody's bandwagon. He built the wagon.
My point in life, or time of life, if that's what you mean, it takes me the length of a river trip to get in shape to begin a river trip.
Sing a song? There is nothing, but absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. To help the earth today, you need energy, but you need a determination to speak out. If you know what you're talking about, say it. Some little bits of God's handiwork have to be left alone.
You look like Winston Churchill with that cigar.
Sir Winston, you are drunk. Yes, madam. I am drunk. And you are ugly. And in the morning, I'll be sober.
He says how he feels, and he lives his life the way, you know, he feels he should, and he wants us to take care of the earth like that too. So I guess that's what inspires me.
How would you describe to someone in the canyon that's never been there?
Describe what?
The Grand Canyon.
Big hole in the ground. Big. What do you mean? I never said, that was so dumb. And